Hey everyone, and welcome back to Sports Design School. I'm so glad that you're with us on the channel today. We have an awesome video that I'm super excited for you guys to watch. Now I know we've been in the middle of our Sports Design School playoff, but I figured I would take a little bit of a break to put out some more content in some different areas. Now today we're revisiting our Editing Your Designs series, and today we have an awesome submission by WSH Football Network on Instagram. I believe he's a Washington football team Instagram page, and he submitted this awesome Justin Fields design. Now, if you are unfamiliar with the Editing Your Designs series, basically designers submit their PSDs, and we go through and just kind of break down our thought process on how we would rethink their design if we could. And the goal isn't to create a radically different design, it's really just to use the same elements and the same look and feel and cutouts that they used, but use our own twist to give it a different look. And so I'm super excited to jump into this Justin Fields design today. So I'm just going to start off by going through each of the layers and kind of unpacking, and then once we get an understanding of where we're at, then we can move from there. So it looks like we have watermark on top, always a nice touch, a few different filters and things like that, okay, and then a separate color correction layer. Now it looks a little bit interesting. It looks like he took blue and used that in his designs. I don't know why. And then it looks like in his color correction, he literally just desaturated the blues. So I'd be interested to see or hear his thought process on that, but we're just gonna turn off that for now. Cool. And then it looks like we have this texture on top of this Justin Fields text with a lot of effects applied to it. And then it looks like we have a paper tear rectangle thing applied. And then another paper tear right below that. And it looks like we have our gradient map on top with, okay, to apply like a blue overlay. Again, interesting choice in the blue. I wonder why. We have an Ohio State sticker, very cool. This Justin Fields paragraph thing with this square. Then we have some player color correction. Okay. We have this little miniature cutout right here. We have, it looks like a white kind of brush around. Interesting tactic for that. We have our main cutout. I'm just gonna go ahead and get rid of that since that wasn't in the original design. And then it looks like we have this cool stripe pattern, and it seems like the way he did it is a little bit interesting. So there are different ways that you can do this. It looks like he took he made a clipping mask on top of one part of it, and then the other part, it looks like, let me remove this. It looks like that is just its own thing. So it looks like he took this kind of pattern and merged it on top. So that'll be interesting to see how we work with that. And then it looks like, again, he has that cutout, and we have this cutout on the left, and a campus map in the background with some textures. And then that gets us to just a plain, solid background. Now, I'm gonna just start off with this cutout and this gradient map. I do like the way this looks a lot. And I'm going to just go through and just set our background to like a black to fit more in line with our Ohio State theme. I don't know if that's necessarily the look he's going for, but that's what we're gonna go with. And then I'm gonna move this over to the center for now and hit Convert to Smart Object. Now what Convert to Smart Object allows us to do is allows us to apply filters and masks and things like that without potentially ruining or removing parts of our image that we don't intend to. And that's looking pretty good right there. I like that placement. And then what I'm gonna do is hit this mask button right here that says Add Layer Mask. And then that'll bring up this white rectangle on the right side of our image. And a lot of people ask, I've gotten a lot of messages recently about how to do this effect. So all we're gonna do is bring up our gradient tool by hitting G on our keyboard. And then I'm just gonna click and drag like this, holding Shift to make sure my line is straight. And it's just a subtle fade out of our cutout, just like that. And just a reminder, make sure your gradient is set to black to transparent. And then just make sure it's set to this gradient, not the others, or else it won't work exactly the same way. And you can see it removed all of our parts in this black part of this rectangle and kept all of the white parts. And I like the way that gradient map is applied. It's like a very nice grungy looking like red and black duotone effect. Very cool. The next thing I want to address is this kind of stripe pattern. Now I do want to make sure we maintain the stripe because I think it is a cool effect and will add some nice dimension. But I don't want this kind of merged Justin Fields line thing. So here's what I'm going to do. And if you're not familiar with this technique, you can just go over to the thumbnail and hold Command or Control if you're on Windows and click, and that will select everywhere in that thumbnail. So you can see we have all of our stripes selected, all of our little pattern selected everywhere. Now what we can do is go up to this button and just hit solid color. And what that will do is automatically fill in a solid color everywhere that we've selected. So you can see right here, we have all of this part selected, and we're able to go through and just kind of change that color. Now I just want a subtle difference between that and the background. And I'm gonna go ahead and delete this right here. And so you can see we have this stripe right here. And if I wanted to make it whatever color, I have the ability to go through and edit that in whatever way I would like to. And I'm just gonna bring that down to the background. Again, this is just a subtle effect, nothing too overwhelming. And I'm really liking the way this is looking so far. Now in terms of the rest of the design, and I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. In terms of the rest of the design, really I think this cutout to be our main cutout, just because I think it's the most visually centered. It looks balanced and it can just be positioned right in the middle and it would look good. But I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this kind of white overlay. Again, I want to convert this to a smart object. Another thing about smart objects, if you're not familiar, is it allows you to decrease the scale of your image and increase it without losing any resolution. So sometimes, like if you have a logo and you drag it in and it's not a smart object and then you shrink it down really small, Photoshop tries to preserve like the image size and things like that, and it'll automatically reduce the size of that logo that you have dragged in. And the trouble is when you try to scale that back up, it looks pixelated. And the same thing can happen with images. So I'm just going to convert it to a smart object and then we can scale it and not have to worry about losing any sizing. I'm just gonna position him just about here. It's important to remind ourselves that graphic design is just like an art form, and so composition is important. We want to have a nice layout that looks aesthetically pleasing to the eye. And similarly to what we did on this cutout, I'm just going to add a little bit of a gradient mask on the bottom. Just for now. And the nice thing about this is if I decide I hate that, I can just go through and delete it. So always nice working non-destructively. So I'm going to position that just like that. And I like the way this looks right now. It looks like he added a lot of sharpening and things like that. And I might, if I had the ability to, go through and turn some of those things down just because it looks very sharpened. And I kind of might want to play around with the look. But unfortunately, when you don't convert it to a smart object, you're not able to go through and play around with those things. But for instance, now if I were to go up to filter, camera raw filter, and let's just say I were to do something crazy like turn our saturation all the way down. So you can see I have this camera raw filter applied, but I'm able to just turn that off because I have a smart object. So that's another perk of smart objects. Now let's move on to the next thing. It looks like we have this. So we have another cutout right here and then this cutout that it looks like he just erased the legs. And again, interesting thing that he, if you can kind of see, he went through and just erased that part of the image where you could just go through in the mask and just brush that part off. So I think we're gonna use this cutout for sure. It'll be interesting to see how much of like this image we actually end up using, because there's a lot of different cutouts and we want to kind of like take it and just shrink it and refine it down to like a few key pieces. Next, we have this Justin Fields paragraph text. And I think I'm going to keep the paragraph, but I think I'm going to do a little bit of a different approach. I might scale this down just a little bit more to give us a bit more space in the top right. So I'm going to move this up here. And then if you know me, you know one of my favorite fonts to do this paragraph effect is Century Old Style. And it looks like his kerning is set to 200. We're going to drop that down and just do regular text. I'm then going to just take it and try to straighten it up as much as possible. And it might not be perfect, but we'll kind of go through and estimate. So maybe, you know what, that's probably good enough. And if not, we can go through and edit that. I'm then going to turn my text size down a little bit because this is just a paragraph, it's a small detail. And kind of like that. Maybe take our text box and widen it out just a bit and then shrink it so we don't have that extra space. Now I love this Century Old Style font because if you're familiar with like the new Nike vintage ads that they kind of have, like the new Just Do It series, I think this is the font they use for that. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks pretty similar. So whenever you put this in a design, it kind of gives it that similar look. So now we have that. And I'm really liking the way this design is shaping up so far. And then what I'm going to do is just type in Justin Fields. And I might end up getting rid of this, but we're just going to try it and see how it looks. And I want to have some like font combo. So I'm going to use this Vanguard font, which is the same font that the Ohio State football program uses. If you're interested in checking it out, it's kind of expensive, just a heads up. And I'll just position it like that. I just like the way a bold, chunky font looks compared to like a serif font like Century Old Style. I forgot the name for a second. And then just a subtle detail, I might just go through and add a little bit of a rectangle in the background because I think that's also another prominent Ohio State design feature. And then bring it in the background, and then for our red, we're just going to use one of these shades of red. I might adjust it just a little bit so it's not as wide. You know what? Maybe not. I kind of like the way it looks. Yeah, that's probably good. And the nice thing is we can always go back through and change it if we would like to. Now in terms of these other elements, it looks like we have this sticker up here. And then we need to bring back the watermark. But we also want to make sure, I think we had one more cutout I wanted to get in. And so for this placement of this cutout, I'm thinking we might do something a little bit different. It's kind of like a popular design trend now of just adding, and I might just convert this to a smart object, is going through and adding a bunch of stroke to an image, kind of like this, and giving it like a sticker effect. You can kind of see right here. And for this, I just have my stroke set to 7 and outside, and the color just set to white. So just like that, and I kind of have it like looks like a sticker a little bit. And then I might just kind of rotate it to give it more of that kind of just placed on effect. And then what I think I'm gonna do is just take a rectangle. And again, design is just about playing around with stuff and seeing what looks good. And I want to match up my reds from this rectangle. So I'm just going to double click here and copy that hex code and then paste it here. So our reds match now. And I'm going to bring it below this. And I do like the way this is looking. And then I want to change my blending mode and kind of see if there's anything kind of cool that we might be able to come up with. So I do kind of like the way this red looks. And maybe I kind of reposition it a little bit. And then I'm going to go through and add a drop shadow. just to give it even more of like that sticker effect. And I know this doesn't look exactly like a sticker. Like if I wanted to, I could take a couple sticker overlays and just throw them on top and make it realistic. But I think this is kind of accomplishing what my goal is for this design. And the next thing, if you keep up with the Sports Design School channel and some of our tutorials, you know I love incorporating a good signature. And I went ahead and preemptively kind of walked through the process of taking a signature. This is just kind of how I do it, but so I go through and I just have this Justin Fields helmet. I couldn't find that many different like cards or things that he had signed, so this was the best I could find. And then I went through and just selected out the parts that have the signature. We're not going to need all of this design, just the signature, or not all of this helmet, just the signature part. And then what you can do is go up to select, color range, and then choose shadows. And I'm going to be careful here because my computer normally shuts off when I'm screen recording and doing this at the same time. But you can see here we have selected just the shadows in the image by playing around with the different ranges and fuzziness levels to select just the cutout. I'm going to hit cancel just to be safe. And then what we get is this nice cutout effect that has like the same drawn on effect and look as our original image. Now I did have to go through and do some erasing around this part of the image, and you can just go over to the mask and hit just like this and erase the parts we don't want. And of course not using the eraser tool, but using our mask. Just like that. And once we have this done, I can just click and drag this into my document. And it has that same hand-drawn look. Now I want to make sure that there we go. And we can kind of place this wherever we want to. And then the nice thing is, since we used a color fill for our signature, if I want to change it, I just go up and drag just like that. Very cool. Now I might play around with the sticker for a second. Again, it's not a smart object, so we're not able to really scale it up. But we'll see. Yeah, it looks a little bit blurry, so maybe we just leave it the size that it is for now. And I think that might be everything. Oh, let's go through and double check on our color correction to see if we don't miss out on anything. Okay, so I do kind of like the way some of this looks. Let me turn some of it down. Again, design is just the process of, okay, so it looks like it's all or nothing. That's kind of weird. Design is just the process of going through and finding what you like and what you don't like, and just being really creative with it. So it looks like we have this color lookup that is kind of driving, and I wonder why he did it so many times. Oh, it's a few different color lookups. Okay. That's really driving this effect. So maybe turn that one down and then turn this one down a bit. And then the thing I notice is when doing this color correction, it does make some of our red rectangles kind of not as colorful, so maybe just spruce those up, increasing the color on those. And we can do the same thing with this gradient map right here. So it looks like in order to get kind of the same brightness, we might have to go in and play around with our gradient map. And that looks pretty good. That shade of red looks fine, I think. just like that. And then like one more small detail you can do if you want to is just select everything, Command G, hold Alt and duplicate. And then we can just hit, you can either convert this to a smart object or just hit merge layers or merge group. For now, we're just gonna hit merge group. If we wanted to go through and edit this, we would just go through and hit convert to smart object, because then we'd be able to go through and edit it, but we're just gonna hit merge group for right now. And you can see this just creates this effect right here where it's all in one layer. I'm then gonna hit Command A, which will just select the document, then hit Command J. And what that allows us to do is, if you see right here, if we were to move this part around, it has the external parts of our image that we don't necessarily want, which I do kind of like the way like something like that looks. Even though it's like off center, I just like the way the pattern kind of interacts in the different spots. But so now we just have our design restrained to the area that it was originally in. And I'm just gonna leave it like there for now. And now we can go up to filter, camera raw filter. And if you don't know, I kind of like going through and adding noise at the end to the entire image, just because I think it's a better way of, or adding grain, a better way of getting a more uniform look throughout your design. So maybe turning it up just a bit. And I think grain is a nice way of really bridging the gap between real images that we see every single day and like the digital art form. Like there's something about seeing a grainy photo that makes it feel more real. And maybe that's just a personal thing, but it's something I've always enjoyed. And then we're gonna play with the vignette a little bit. Just something kind of subtle. Just like that. And I'm liking the way this is looking. One last thing I want to do is just go through, as always, and apply levels filter and really just kind of play around with the contrast. And I think that's it. I think that's all I would do for this design. Again, thanks so much to WSH. Let me pull up his Instagram handle so I make sure I get it correct. WSH Football Network for submitting this Justin's Field design. I hope you enjoyed kind of walking through my design process. Again, this was just me recording on the fly, just coming up with ideas as it went along. Not necessarily like having any scripted thing, but just going through and being creative and going through my creative process. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, guys. I would super appreciate it. It helps the channel so much in terms of getting these videos in front of more people. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you're subscribed. We have lots of awesome content coming out very soon. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.